Hello and welcome. This is Beyond the Lane. My name is Mark and we are going to be talking Tottenham Hotspur. So this whole video is going to be dedicated to transfer news. So first up, we'll talk about loans. We'll get them out of the way and then we will hit up the main order of businesses. Who are we signing or who are we in for or who have we been rebuffed from in our opportunities to sign somebody. So loan news, Alfie Devine has signed a brand new contract with the club and has also went out to Preston North End on a season-long loan, 21 years of age. So the contract, in my mind, is more if he does not produce the goods this season to crack on and join the first team squad proper next season, and it will at least confirm a fee of a larger value should we look to sell him on afterwards. But fingers crossed he does, because Alfie Devine is a very good player. He just needs the opportunities. And it's a little bit of a shame that we've actually seen some of our attacking young talent going out on loan, especially after James Maddison getting injured. Jamie Donnelly at the weekend for Stoke, coming on the 74th minute and creating an assist, is a number 10 and somebody that we could have used. Maybe not to utilise that role 100% full time, but certainly as a backup and a squad rotation player for somebody that we need to bring in. But we'll get into that a little bit later on. Yang Meng-hyuk has confirmed a season-long loan. I mentioned this in my previous video a couple of days ago, but that has now been confirmed by the club. So the young Korean getting a little bit more experience out there. So looked a wee bit bright in the very short time that he had in the friendly against Newcastle, a good couple of attacking runs down that left-hand side. So hopefully a bit more experience after a good spell at QPR last season will hopefully bring the young lad into the form, a bit more aggression, and hopefully build up a wee bit more strength as well. He's certainly going to need it if he wants to be able to play for Spurs in the Premier League as well. So that's not too bad. Rumours abound at the moment that Lille are targeting Kinski as a loan target should their main goalkeeper go to PSG. That transfer for them is on the cards, so they're looking for a backup replacement. It'd be utter madness for Spurs to loan out Kinski at the moment. I like Austin as a goalkeeper, but I think Kinski is far, far better. And certainly from what we've seen over the pre-season friendlies, to me, Kinski is certainly leading the way to be the number one goalkeeper for the club. Watching Vicario against Bayern Munich, we're going to be coming up against a lot of teams of that kind of caliber in the Champions League. And while he made some exceptional saves against Bayern, I kind of felt, certainly for the last three goals, although they were exceptional goals by Bayern Munich, he just seemed to be always standing in the wrong place when those shots were getting hit in. Would have been a great goalkeeper to save them, but he's pulled off saves like this in the past, and he did make some exceptional saves during that match. I just kind of feel the overall ball at freedom playing out as well. Kinski just seems a lot less panicked and rushed on the ball as well. I think I've said it before in a previous video. Certainly my prediction is by the end of the season, we could potentially be looking at Kinski being the number one if he is getting that opportunity to do so. But putting him out on loan, I think, is really, really stupid of the club if that actually goes ahead. There were rumours a little while back that he was out and open for a loan move and the club wanted him to get a bit more experience and not just kind of sit on the bench. But what's the point in bringing in this young talent if we're not going to give them the opportunities, especially when we're going to be looking at League, FA Cup, as well as the Champions League on top of the Premier League. So you want to make sure that you're rotating your keepers out as well and giving them rest times as and when they're needed. So it seems like a strange move if that does go ahead. But if it does, we're going to need to bring somebody in to back up that line, because otherwise you're talking Vicario and Austin, and then one of the younger goalkeepers beyond that there. So it seems a silly move to do it. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's have a look at the transfer mill. So there are rumours abound. We have our first competitive game against PSG in 3 days' time. Season kicks off not long after that. So we really need to get those reinforcements in, and the rumour mill is going nuts at the moment. We are being linked with anybody and everybody, probably more than we have been all pre-season. So let's get a look at what we're being linked to. So Rob Guest from Football London has been talking about a potential move for Mikkel Damsgaard, the Danish international, 25 years old, at Brentford is being seen as a potential option to come in there and help plug that creative midfield role that's been left vacant after James Maddison getting a terrible ACL injury, who could be out for 6 to 9 months. So we're needing to backfill that slot, and we are being linked by pretty much every attacking midfielder that may be available for a transfer. Brentford, in terms of value, is probably talking around 25 to 35 million, but considering how many players they've already sold this season and a real struggle to bring players in, the odds of them actually selling a young international at that kind of age group, and a decent season as well last year for Brentford, it's going to be a tough one to sell, I think, for them to actually want to put that guy out there when they're struggling to find replacements for the players they've already sold. So while it is a pretty solid option, and certainly somebody that Thomas Frank would be well versed round, it just seems a bit silly that it's one that we would take on, and certainly one that Brentford would get rid of. I think there's probably far better options out there available to us should we make the right moves. Wissa is looking more likely that he is going to be joining Newcastle as they put a more improved bid into Brentford, and we certainly do not seem as if we are putting any kind of effort into that kind of transfer at all, given the lack up front. Richie, I thought, put in a shift, but again, no end product from that. Solanke is probably still a few weeks off coming back and starting games and playing to what we've seen him play previously. So we're really relying on Richie until given that upfront push. Richardson's own place within the team is also a question mark, with him being linked to move to various different clubs, but nothing really materialising in terms of either loan approaches or sales. And really, if we want to bring in a forward, we really need to move him on. So that's a bit of a sore point, I think. Certainly for me, Wissa looks like a very good player, can play in the left, can play through the middle, and would certainly help fill a number of gaps, especially after Son has left as well. So it would tick the boxes. The age, although I say is a consideration in previous videos, by the time the season finishes, he's going to be around 30, 31. Paying 25 to 35 million for a player of that age just seems a bit redundant, especially when you kind of have a look at what the Tottenham model is in terms of being able to buy and sell on players as well. We've only managed to get big money at the end of a player that kind of age, with them being exceptional. If you look at Harry Kane, as well as getting the £20 million for Son as a 33-year-old as well. With Maddison being injured, we are being linked with a whole host of other attacking midfielders, as we've already said here. Bilal El Khannouss, the Moroccan international for Leicester, supposedly has a £22.5 million release clause for that. How we look at the comparison document here, I picked this up on Reddit. I can't hold credit to it, but it shows the comparison between himself and Eze in terms of what they did last season, and certainly the age as well. Very young player, actually really, really good. But again, we're looking at players that need to be experienced, seasoned professionals. A really good young player, really good future ahead of him, I think. Certainly would fit the mold for us, but is it the type of player we're going to get? And I think the value is probably something that would interest Daniel Levy as well, in terms of signing with a potential resale value further down the line. An exciting player, and certainly a definite kind of player that you could look at as an alternative to a player like Eze, but I think Eze is definitely right up there, and we'll talk about him a little bit later on as well. Jack Grealish, I know we've already spoken about him a few days ago. That is progressing quite quickly in the Everton front, but he certainly seems to be holding out to see if Spurs are going to make that approach, but I don't think he's going to hang around too long. World Cup ahead of him, he's going to be wanting to be signed up and playing for a team very quickly, so we would be running out of time if it's a deal that we'd be looking to make. Potential option being mooted for Everton is a season-long loan, but that would cost around 10 to 12 million just for that one season. In terms of Everton, it may be a good stopgap for them, but certainly for us, you put that in with an option to buy at the end. As long as that value comes off of that, it might not be such a bad deal if we get that in as a loan deal. Certainly would improve our squad drastically and would certainly help the player out in terms of trying to get into that England squad as well. So one to think about, but whether or not we actually move forward, I don't know. Marc Guehi Crystal Palace. Liverpool are looking more likely to sign him. They are playing in the Community Shield today, and the suspicions are that there's going to be talks probably after the game about a potential signing. He would cost around 45 million and has been a player we have been linked with for a number of seasons. Certainly £45 million is a drop in the ocean when you consider England international. I think he's around 24, 25. It ticks all the boxes in terms of what we need as a centre half as well. And given the fact we've got a big season ahead of us in terms of volume of games, seasoned player would be fantastic for us. Really strong international player as well. So in terms of dropping him into the Champions League would be a no-brainer as well. And the value, I think, ticks all the boxes as well. But again, it all depends on what Liverpool do next. But whether we go in for him or not, I don't know. But certainly a player we've been linked to for quite some time. Nichloas Jackson from Chelsea is another player that we have been linked with over the last couple of weeks. Chelsea bought him for £35 million. So if they were to sell him, it sounds as if they are open to selling him. You're probably not going to see him go for anything less than that 35 million. If anything, they'll probably want to make money on that. So you could be looking at anywhere upwards of 40 million. Played 30 games last season with 10 goals and 5 assists. So not a bad return for the player. In terms of what you're looking for, we'd be hoping for a bit more than that. But again, he can play that role and playing right across that front three as well. So there's a lot of versatility there, and the type of player that certainly Ange previously would have liked, and certainly the type of player that Frank likes to have in his squad as well. So do we want him? I don't know how serious we are, but Newcastle and a number of other clubs are looking at him as well. So it all depends on the seriousness in terms of what are we looking to get and what realistically can we get for good money. This is Spurs after all. We don't normally slash the cash without trying to do some negotiation on drop in the value. So I think if we were to go for him again for 35 to 40 million, it would be a decent deal. But whether or not it's the type of player we want or need at the club is a different matter altogether. And it all depends on whether or not we're actually looking at him properly in the first place. One that we have been rumoured to have put in a bid and had it rejected is Nico Paz from Como, the Italian side. Rejected apparently a £30 million bid from Spurs for the 20-year-old Argentina player. And simply because they want 52 million for him. Looking at his stats and looking at some of the highlight reels and stuff, he certainly looks like he could tick the boxes for that attacking midfield role for the club. But again, 20-year-old international, does he have the experience that we are going to need for playing in the Premiership? In terms of the build in that role, is he going to be able to take it and knocked about the pitch? Is he going to be able to get himself back up and get into that run and get the ball, move on and attack goals, especially when he's going to be getting hit with some really hard tackles? I don't know. It might be another one of these ones that flutters to deceive, very much like Brian Hill. Does all the bits and pieces, comes to England and just really struggles to play that game. However, his attacking ability and creativity is up there. It's really solid. But again, we're going to be in Europe. Is he going to be able to fit into that role? No offense to Como, they're not one of the best Italian sides. So you're looking at in terms of, will he be able to make that step up? Because there's going to be more demand if he was to come into Spurs right now. But again, very good player. Certainly ticks all the boxes in terms of what we look at in terms of targets. Young, skillful, massive potential for resale value as well. So whether we go back with another bid or not, I don't know. We have supposedly had a bid turned away for Ferran Torres at Barcelona as well. 40.3 million, if I recall correctly. Not seen too many people reporting on that, so whether or not it's true, I am not 100% sure. Really good player, but again, is he somebody that would come to Spurs? His ability, his experience certainly is there, but whether or not he would want to come to Spurs from a club like Barcelona, I don't know. If you can get him on a season-long loan, potentially an option, or being able to buy him or an obligation to buy him at the end, then maybe it's something we can do. But I believe the player has turned down the move as well as Barcelona. So we'll see what happens there. Looking at other midfield options, we're being linked with a whole host of young talent at the moment. James McAtee of Man City is apparently keen on a move to Spurs, especially after the Maddison injury announcement. So there's probably more guarantee of game time, something more than he's probably going to get at Man City if he was to remain. Again, it's one of those ones. Do you buy him outright? Do you take him on loan with an obligation or an option to buy? There's a whole host of potential clauses that would pop into something like that as well. Buyback options, sell on fees, etc. So it would be a shrewd negotiation, I think, for Spurs to negotiate something like that. Although I think Man City are looking at a fee very similar to the Cole Palmer, with around £40 million being mooted for that one. Jacob Ramsey at Aston Villa is another young player, 24 years of age. He's been linked with the club for a while, but they're looking around 40 to 50 million to sign him as well. He's a good player. I know some of the fan base are quite happy around this kind of guy being at the club, but is it the kind of statement signing that we're looking for? I don't know. A good player, I think, for the squad, but is it the kind of player we're looking to come in and really kind of hit the ground running? Yes, he's got the Premier League experience, but you kind of need a player with a bit of name and a bit of clout to come in, because, no offence, we've been exceptionally poor since our initial signings at the start of the summer, which made us look really good in terms of getting business done early, and it looked like the window was going to be great for us. Gibbs, Morgan White hits, and then we've done nothing since, or the appearances that we have done nothing since. So other than getting Paulinho on loan, but we'll have a chat about him momentarily as well. So we wait and see what happens, but two very good young players. Whether or not they're going to tick the boxes in terms of what we're going to need for a whole season, as well as fighting in Europe, again, is a question mark. Harvey Elliott at Liverpool is again another player we are being heavily linked with. Apparently, there have been conversations ongoing. Thomas Frank even speaking to the player, apparently. Although Liverpool are presenting two options for anybody who is wishing to purchase him: £40 million with a buyback clause in 2 years' time, or £50 million with no clauses at all in it and an outright transfer. The one thing with these buyback clauses is they usually have a small window for them to be activated, and there's usually an agreed fee. So whether or not we were to sign him, he was to become exceptional, and there's a very low fee for that, you could end up seeing yourself into a very, very similar position we've seen some other clubs in terms of those buyback clauses, and we're kind of getting those ringings of the Gibbs, Morgan White release clause bit going on, where that caused absolute carnage and chaos. So it's one of those ones that I like him as a player. I think he's got a lot to offer. I think he's got a bright future. Again, is he the type of player we need? Potentially. Is he going to last a full season and deal with the rigours of Champions League football and all the rest of it? He's done some bits at Liverpool, so making that step up maybe isn't such a bad thing. But again, it's whether or not he has the required experience and the ability to lift himself up and push for it. He would certainly enhance the squad. Whether or not he would step straight into that first 11, I don't know. We've also been linked to Bariz Alper Yilmaz from Galatasaray. The Turkish superstar has been linked to the club with £30 million valuation if we were wanting to sign him. Apparently, we've made a few pokes at the club to see if the player is available and what kind of money we'd be looking at in purchasing him. 14 goals and 6 assists last season in the Turkish league. So, in terms of what he can do, he can score goals and he can create them. Again, it's that Premier League experience, making that step across and the step up into that. Certainly being at Galatasaray, he will have European experience, which is good. And certainly as a backup to Solanke, or someone who can push Solanke, I think he would certainly tick those boxes for that as well. So in terms of that, 30 million probably sounds like quite a bit. I think knowing Daniel Levy, get that down to 25 million, and it's certainly a good option. I think he's about 25, 26 as well, which means that, in terms of age, he's still to hit his prime. So I think in certainly for an attacking option and back up to Solanke and someone who can push that. And I think he can play anywhere across the front three as well. So again, another player that ticks a lot of boxes. So I think he would be a good signing. And we have been linked to this player last season, and I think the season before as well. So it kind of sounds about right at the type of player that we would be looking at. Coming back in at Eze at the end of the kind of transfer talk here is, I think he's the player the whole fan base is screaming out for. Somebody that is highly, highly experienced in the Premier League. He is an England international. Certainly from a European perspective, I don't think he'd have any issues whatsoever getting up there and dealing against the best out there. He certainly is a fantastic player. We're looking at somewhere in the region of 67, 68 million. Then we should just be throwing it. If we were looking at dropping 60 million on Gibbs White, then put an extra 7-8 million on top of it to pick up an absolute proven Premier League player like Eze, then we should be doing it. It should be our number one transfer option at the moment and all we're going for. Seen a thing the other day that apparently Arsenal have agreed personal terms with the player. They have supposedly agreed a fee with the club of around 55 million, paying a really good chunk of that up front. And I think what's happening at the moment is they're negotiating how those payments are going to be made going forward, which leaves a small window of opportunity. And if Spurs are being absolutely serious, and there is some chatter that we have noted an interest in the player officially with Palace, then we really should be going all out. A, you're going to appease the fans. B, you're buying an absolute superstar of a player who won't just enhance the squad, they'll enhance the first 11. Son's left. We're struggling up front. Eze ticks the boxes for all of that. So it makes an absolute no-brainer. Try and do a double deal and pick up Guehi at the same time, 110, 120 million. You're going to appease the options that Frank's looking for. He wants another centre-half and he wants an attacking player. Eze and Guehi could do that in one fell swoop for the club. So it kind of makes sense to really push and go all out for this one. But, if we're going to have a quick chat in terms of what we've looked like in terms of the transfer market, we started out exceptionally well. We've tied up Danzo and Tell right at the start. We brought in Japanese international Takai for 5 million. We've went and we brought in Polina on loan, although that was a bit further on down the line, and we've signed Mohamed Kudus for 54 million. Certainly in the friendly games, he has looked an absolute monster and going forward. Certainly against Bayern, he was a standout player, which doesn't really say an awful lot considering how poorly we played across the board. But in terms of being an attacking threat, every time he had the ball, he was bang going forward. What I wouldn't mind seeing from him when he's bombing forward is actually when he realises he is the front man and there's no one else around him, he just keeps attacking at goal. There's been quite a few times over the last sort of 3 real competitive friendlies that we've played against Arsenal, Newcastle and Bayern. He's hit that point where he is the furthest most player, has a look around for where's the pass going out to realise there is no one else there, and then he stops and holds up the ball for everyone else to come in. So I think if he can bring that into his game where he just keeps going, if he realises it's just me, I just take them on, I think we'll probably see a higher goal return from him. But certainly has not failed to live up to the hype that's came in with us signing him. But what's happened then is we've just completely stagnated. It's almost as if with the Gibbs White transfer falling through that we have all of a sudden become afraid to make moves. Now, the Polina move apparently took 2 weeks to get in line just to bring him in on loan, and that timescale kind of ties in with the Morgan White stuff happening. So I wonder if we've maybe just realised, like, this transfer is going nowhere. We're going to focus on something that has an opportunity of moving forward, but at the same time, it's, what is Lanya doing? What is Levy doing? Where are our targets? Where are the moves happening? We're not seeing anyone going out of being sold out of the club. Richie's been linked with a move away. Nothing's materialised. Basuma has been linked with moving away. Nothing's materialised. We've had 2 clubs in Turkey looking at him. With Richie, a number of Saudi clubs, even 2 of the Brazilian clubs that made a bank out of the World Club Cup. We're looking at him. Supposedly that's never came off. And Everton were supposedly looking at bringing him back. That didn't come off either. So, in terms of what we're doing, one thing you could always look at Spurs in years gone by, we have sold, and we've made money. This season, it just seems to have stagnated where we're looking at, we've not brought an awful lot in, other than I think the Højbjerg deal from last season, that there was the obligation to buy him after the loan and off he went. So, we're not getting rid of the dead wood that's still sitting at the club that we need to shift on so we can bring more players in and actually free up and revitalise that squad, especially when we're looking at there's another, there's Madison injured for long term. So in terms of creativity in midfield, we've got nothing. we're really, really lacking, and we're having to see Sarr playing that further bit upfield. Hopefully, looking at that game against Bayern, I'm kind of hoping that Thomas Frank has said to players, look, go out, play the game, play it competitively, but don't push yourself. We don't need any more injuries, because a lot of the players, when you see them, and to be honest, they looked tired. They looked really tired. It was hot in Korea. It was hot in Hong Kong. They've came back, and I think it was 28 degrees in Bayern. Um, you know, that's a lot for a body to take in, especially when you're trying to push yourself physically as well. And they just looked really tired. So I'm kind of hoping that there's been a wee bit of a break in between to try and rest the players and get them up, certainly for this match against PSG in 3 days' time, because that is going to be pretty tight. It's going to be pretty tough. And certainly, we're going to have to be playing at our best for that one. And, we need to do more than we did in that Bayern game. That was just horrendous, pretty much right across the board. Kudus played well when he had the ball going forward. I didn't even realise Bentancur was on the pitch until partway through the second half when someone mentioned his name. I actually thought he'd been brought on as a sub. I had to double check the starting 11 to see that he had actually started. He was quiet. Some of these guys are playing, you don't even know they're there. Spence looked busy, but again, was at fault for one of the goals. And we just didn't look like we were at the races. Yang came on towards the end, had a couple of wee attacks, looked reasonable. But again, the lack of playing time with that squad and fitness probably didn't help as well. But, and across the board, Richie flattered to deceive, did a lot of running about. As usual, runs himself into the ground. But, he's up there to score goals and he just isn't doing it. Tell looked bright when he came on in spells, looking like he was trying to impress, probably not just Thomas Frank, but Bayern Munich, to say, look, this is what you could have had. And he looked bright. I know I've seen stuff from other fans that have said that, that he didn't play well, but from what I saw, I certainly seen potential there. He certainly seemed to get the ball and try and attack, which is more than what most of the other players that did. Brennan Johnson looked awfully tired, and you could kind of see him in the background on things where we lost balls and goals were scored, where he just looked tired. I don't think it wasn't that the players didn't try. They all just looked like they'd maybe played one competitive game too much in a friendly. But at the end of the day, you play games to win. You don't play there to take part. You're there to win the game. So hopefully we'll see a far better attacking-minded lineup. Certainly one defensively. We conceded despite the fact those last 3 goals for Bayern were superb. If we were looking at it, we can look at that game any way you want. The first goal against Kane, marginally offside. VAR would have caught it, but by the same accounts, 2 tackles by Romero on Kane, he should have been sent off, and probably would have been if VAR had have been there. So, swings and roundabouts, sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't. Kane missing the penalty, it's hard to say if he actually slipped or if he was doing it as a favour to us, not to make us look bad, but we did that to ourselves. Anyway, that is the transfer roundup at the moment. If there anything else happens, anything big, we'll chuck something out as well. Anyway, that's the video, guys. Drop a like on it, subscribe to the channel, comments down below. Just going to wait for this PSG came on. Come on, you Spurs.